Welcome, citizens of Gotham, to The Fire Rises, a Batman podcast focusing on all things The Dark Knight and his world. If you'd like to connect with the show, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at TFR Batpod. And if you have thoughts, questions, comments, or even suggestions for future episodes of the show, you can reach us by email at tfrbatpod@gmail.com. My name's Eric Carter, and I am your host, and I am joined once again by my co-host, as long as he doesn't spoil the Flash for me, Joe Fornerato. Joe, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing good, and if I do, it would not be intentional. Right now, I can't spoil it for you. I have not seen it yet, but man, you got me going now. I hopefully at the time of recording this, I will be an hour into the Flash in my screening tomorrow night. I cannot wait to see this movie. And
Yep,
I'm so thankful that I can't even believe how well it worked out for me that I get to go see this tomorrow.
yep, and I am not jealous at all, not one bit. Uh, but yes, congratulations. That's awesome that you get to see it. And I want to know nothing, but that's cool. I know there's very limited screening, so if you guys out there, the listeners, if you guys have got a limited screening, if you're able to go see the Flash tomorrow, that is as of the time of this recording tomorrow, Monday the 22nd. If you get to see the Flash, that's really cool, but be a good person and no spoilers. But we are officially on the road to the Flash because in a little less than a month, we all get to see it. June 16th, it drops for the world. And the next several episodes are kind of our journey to the film. So we are kind of on a path to get to the Flash. And Joe, there are several anniversaries. We love to do anniversaries. There's several milestone anniversaries that are actually falling into line and fit perfectly to talk about in the lead up to the Flash, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny because like the anticipation for the movie, um, it's been so much fun like doing this, whether you want to call it like a rewatch to lead up to it, like the films we're going to be covering. I had to like speed it up a little bit because I was spacing mine out to make it last me because that's part of the fun is watching this stuff and getting amped up for the movie. So I'm glad that we are recording this one when we are. So I made sure I got this one in and I started my rewatch of these movies early enough where I am going to be able to cram them all in. And yeah, this one is probably the most, I don't want to say convenient, but it's the most, um, uh, what's the word I'm looking for here? Accurate or relevant?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the one we're going to talk about next time is pretty relevant as well, just based on the trailers we've seen. But yes,
Hmm.
so without burying the lead or being any more vague, today we are discussing the now 10-year-old, well, almost 10. We're discussing it early, but the 10-year-old DC animated film Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox. And this movie came out in 2013, July, I believe. So we are just a little bit early, but it felt succinct. It felt like a good time now that we're getting to The Flash itself, the feature film that is apparently very, very heavily motivated and influenced by Flashpoint, the comic, and as is this movie we're talking about today. So Joe, without further ado, let's get into talking about Justice League, the Flashpoint Paradox. Okay, so Joe, the first thing I want to talk about, just off the top here, is Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox is one hellacious title for a DC animated film. Um, I think it's a little much, but I've always thought that title was just cumbersome. What do you think, just off the top, about the title of the movie?
I honestly never thought about it. I know you had even said that to me like when we were talking about doing it because I think you had said like we're going to cover Flashpoint or whatever we were discussing. And I'm like, wait, are we covering the movie or the book? And you were like, no, a Flashpoint Paradox, the movie. And I'm like, oh, okay. Um, and yeah, I think yeah, the Paradox thing is the one that's like why I get the Justice League thing. Like push it as a Justice League film. It's easily at the time it was much easier to market Justice League than it would have been the Flash.
Mhm.
So I get that, and yeah, I mean, I can't believe this thing's only already 10 years old. But yeah, the title, yeah, I guess the Flashpoint Paradox is a little much. It's a long title, but it never really occurred to me that much because I didn't think about it because I just refer to it as the Flashpoint movie. I
Mm.
don't even really consider it like Justice League. I just go the Flashpoint movie. That's it. We have there are a lot of movies out there that have like uh not disappointing titles, but titles that aren't the best, and you kind of just forgive it and move on and don't even like relate it to being a bad title. You just relate it to the film that you saw.
Yeah, completely. I mean, unless I'm being specific, I do always refer to this as Flashpoint, because that's what it is. But yeah, like you, I completely understand putting the Justice League branding on it, but just call it Justice League Flashpoint. We don't need
Mhm.
we don't need the paradox. It's just yeah. But either way, we're not going to beat that to death. I just thought it is a little cumbersome, so I thought I'd bring it up as a nitpick because I do like to start with the negatives mostly and then go positive. So while we're at that, I will say that my biggest nitpick with this film, just to get it out of the way early, and by the way, for you listeners, this movie is 10 years old. So we're not doing a spoiler free section. If you haven't seen the movie, stop here, go watch it and come back. But chances are you have if you're listening to this show. But back to what I was saying, my major nitpick with this film is the art style. I always forget because generally I love this movie. Um, I love how faithful it is, but I always forget until I rewatch it that this art style is just it wasn't a good choice in my opinion. Some of the characters they just look very strange out of the proportions. I think the body proportions are really really weird. So I just wanted to bring that up right off the top and give you a second joke because I know you had kind of mirrored my irritation with the art in our personal conversation. So what do you think about this art style?
Well, the art style is weird because I think I said to you, like, in certain instances, the art looks fine. Like, it's like they chose different characters to go with those extreme proportions. Where, like,
Mm-hmm.
even for Thomas Wayne, it doesn't really bother me that much. But, like, I think Superman looks really bizarre in the beginning. Um, like, they look bloated, for lack of a better term. Like, I don't. And it's funny because I don't even remember that being an issue I had because I think I just accepted the movie for what it was when it first came out. But now that I think we've gotten so many other films with different animation styles, that like you go back and watch this and you're like, whoa, like this is jarring. But it's not consistently jarring either. That's what I think baffles me. Like when you look at like Barry, he looks perfectly fine. Like Barry,
Mm-hmm.
even the Flash and Reverse Flash look fine. It's just certain characters they kind of did some weird things with like you said the proportions. They look like too big. I keep saying bloated. I don't know why. Like I don't know. But again, it's not like a deal breaker or anything for me. I just felt like imagine this with the style they chose to go forward with, which I get like they don't need to do that. But I think just a more traditional style might have been better.
Mm-hmm.
But it is what it is.
Well, and I think what I noticed because I watched this twice in preparation for the episode, what I noticed is the characters who generally tend to be slimmer look normal
Yeah,
in
exactly.
this movie, and if you stop and think about it, they look bigger than they should. But next to all these other characters that are just like you said, kind of bloated, they look normal. Like
Hmm.
Flash looks great, Wonder Woman looks great, Lois Lane looks great. But like, and even the Thomas Wayne Batman, I think he looks pretty good. But yeah, Superman, Aquaman, some of these characters, even Shazam, they just look strange.
Yeah.
So it's almost kind of an anime style.
Yes.
And it just
I've
kind
seen
of
people make that. I've seen people make that comparison, which I don't know. It's I guess because we associate anime with extreme, but I almost don't even want to like just chalk it up to an anime style as a negative because I don't think
mhm,
that's fair. But I think it's almost like a that's our like association with it for some reason to almost like give it an excuse. But I almost feel like that's dismissing it, almost dismissing anime because I don't like when you look at something like Batman Gotham Knight, like the characters weren't bloated in that. It had that style to it, but not the proportions that we're talking about.
mhm. Yeah, but it just I think the biggest frustration is I think Andy Kubert's art is pretty I think it should be one of those that is, I guess, easier to homage, if that makes sense.
It'll translate somewhat easily.
Yeah,
Yes.
like it seems like this would translate much easier than Frank Miller's art. And we all know what they did with The Dark Knight Returns. So I don't know, it's just
Yeah.
confusing with the choices here.
Mhm.
Um, but now what is not a nitpick for me, and this is the next kind of point I wanted to get to, is this voice cast. I mean, wow. We always talk about how great DC's voice casting is, but have you looked down the list of voices for this
So
movie, Joe?
I'm so glad you brought that up because I don't know what it is about this movie, but I never thought about the voice cast ever. And I didn't look it up prior to rewatching it. And the minute I heard Cyborg's voice, I go, wait a second. I go, that sounds familiar. And then I like 2 minutes later, I'm like, no, that can't be. I'm like, it sounds like Michael B. Jordan.
Mhm.
I'm like, it's got to be like a sound alike. There's no way they got Michael B. Jordan for this. And sure as hell, Mike, I do not remember Michael B. Jordan doing the voice of Cyborg in this. And I know there's a ton of other big actors that are in this, but that's the one that I was like, was it so long ago that he wasn't on my radar back then? Is that possible? I don't know, but wow, like what a get for this.
Well, it's 10 years ago. So we didn't have him as Creed yet, correct?
Yeah. No, I mean this is even prior to sorry to bring it up, but this is prior to Fantastic Four, isn't it? Because that was 2012? 2000 wait, no, was that
No,
2014?
I think it was 15.
It was 15, yeah, because this was 2012. I'm sorry, or 2013. Obviously, the book was
Right.
2012 because obviously 10-year anniversary, idiot.
I
But
think at that time, the only thing I would have known him from was Chronicle. And I
okay,
don't know.
yeah, and I didn't watch that.
Oh man, watch Chronicle. So it came out the year before this movie, and it's kind of it's a found footage superhero film.
Yeah, I know of it because that's what got Josh Trank the gig for Fantastic Four, and
Right.
I didn't realize Michael B. Jordan was in with that, but that makes sense with that movie.
Yeah, yeah. So I really like that movie. I think it's kind of a hidden gem, but that is the only thing that I would have known Michael B. Jordan from at this time. And
Mhm.
like you, when I was looking through the cast list, because I honestly I didn't even think about it when I was watching the movie this time. I didn't catch the voice somehow, but then on the second watch, I was like, oh yeah, obviously that's who
Mhm.
that is. But yeah, it's not just Michael B. Jordan. I mean, of course, you've got the legendary Kevin Conroy as Batman, which you don't get a ton of him. You get him at the beginning and you get him a little bit at the end. Um, you've got C. Thomas Howell. Kevin McKidd is Thomas Wayne Batman. Justin Chambers is, of course, the Flash. But then you have names like Nathan Fillion, Danny Houston, Jennifer Hale. Just names that have popped up so much in DC lore, and Danny Houston especially because Danny's got a kind of a legacy cast with DC now because he was the villain
Mhm.
in Wonder Woman. So, do you remember him?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah. So and that was one of those voices that popped out immediately because he's on Succession, the HBO series, and my wife and I have been watching that. So he's been on my mind recently. And as soon as I heard General Sam Lane start talking, I was like, that's Danny Houston. So yeah, just an incredible cast here. for this movie. Was there any standouts for you upon a rewatch?
Not as far as recognizing the voices, but just going through the list, like you got Dana Delaney doing
Mhm.
Lois Lane, another legacy casting, obviously, and the woman that plays Nora Allen. When I looked at her, I was like, oh, she looks familiar. Like I feel like I've seen that, IMDb photo somewhere, and she did Selena Kyle in the Arkham games. So they have pulled some more legacy castings for this, and there's a ton of good voice actors in this that really were kind of one and done, which is kind of a shame. But it's almost like the forgotten. Like it's weird because I know this film really well, but as far as like the voice cast, it almost was like went under the radar for me. I never put too much thought into who did the voices of this. Like it's one of those
Mhm.
Mandela effect things where I might have just always assumed it was the same actors that we've had for years. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, well, and I almost forgot to mention, we even get Ron Perlman in this,
Hmm.
in a very tiny part because he's barely in it, as Slade Wilson, Deathstroke. But I mean, that shows you because Ron Perlman, even in 2013, that was not a small get for an animated film. I mean,
Hmm.
I know he does a lot of voice work, but at that time, he was all in the swing of Hellboy and things like that. So I mean, his stardom was pretty on the rise at the time. So yeah, Ron Perlman's great catch for a tiny little part here. But anyway, let's get into the story itself. I mean, it's as we said earlier, it is very close to the story we get in the book. Obviously, this was written by Jim Krieg, although if you look at IMDb, and I'm not sure if it's just because the book was written by them or if it's an actual real writing credit, but Jeff Johns and Andy Kubert are credited as writers as well.
Yeah, because in IMDb, when you click on it, it does say based on the graphic novel Flashpoint by Jeff
Ah,
Johns.
gotcha.
So that's probably why it's probably a legal thing. Like you better give him credit because it is basically his story, which makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, and just with the story itself for this film, if we're gonna get right into it, I think the great thing they did with this is they not only took the main story of Flashpoint, they did a really good job of giving you a little bit more of each of the tie-ins.
Yeah,
Because
they did.
when I saw this movie, I don't think I had actually read the Flashpoint main story. I think I had just read the Batman tie-ins for whatever reason. And I had never realized.
That's an odd choice, but
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know what the reasoning was, but I think because I knew about the whole Thomas Wayne thing, I wanted to read that trade. And I had that trade, but I never had Flashpoint. So
right.
I don't think I really knew what I was reading. I think I just wanted something like I heard about the Thomas Wayne thing and just picked it up. But I had never realized that the whole Martha Wayne reveal is not in the Flashpoint story, the main story. It's strictly in the Batman tie-in. So I thought
Mhm.
that was really cool that they chose to put that in for this because it's a pretty interesting part of the story, and they did a lot more with Hal Jordan. They did a lot more with a lot of the other side characters too. I think they did a really good job of giving you just a little bit more of each of those stories because I think the main story of Flashpoint, the book, is very streamlined. It's a very quick read.
Mhm. Yeah, it is, and we just mentioned Ron Perlman as Slade Wilson. I mean, even the Deathstroke stuff in the movie is from the tie-ins because
Mhm.
Deathstroke had his own tie-in for Flashpoint. And each of there's some stuff they touch on between, you know, Arthur and Diana that is from the tie-in comics. So yeah, they do a very good job of stringing that in through the movie, and it kind of works as padding the runtime, but it doesn't feel like that, if that
Well, it's
makes
giving you
sense.
more of that Flashpoint world, which I think is so good for this movie. And yeah, yeah, it is technically padding the runtime, but it's giving you stuff that is just spreading out into that world. That, like, what kind of world did Barry create with this? And
Mhm.
I think that's really good, especially for someone like that just read the main story. You're watching this movie now and you're getting a little bit more tidbits, and you're like, oh, like, I wonder what all that's from. And now you can go back and kind of read the tie-ins because it's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and we would be remiss not to mention that this was directed by Jay Oliva, who is very well known in the DC movie space. So that I did want to give him some credit there. But yeah, so far as like was interesting when I started watching this movie um, for the rewatch here, the whole kind of Justice League portion at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
where they're going after the rogues. That is that is not from the book at all, is it? Is that part of
No,
some of the
nope.
tie-ins? Because
That
I
is,
don't. It,
if it's from like maybe the Flash tie-in, that's possible, but I don't think so. Um,
I think it
I
was
had
created for the movie.
That's the idea I always got,
Hmm.
because also remember they went with the pre-crisis death of his mom for this, which is very interesting because Reverse Flash killing his mother is a pretty important part of the Flashpoint book.
Hmm.
Where in this they chose to go with the random robber, which was the pre-crisis version of, maybe I think that's the pre-crisis. Yeah, because Barry dies in Crisis, so you don't really hear anything about that till Flashpoint or Rebirth.
Hmm.
Flash Rebirth, not Rebirth, the story, the event. But so I found that very interesting. And just while you were talking about Jay Oliva, I want to throw in there. So imagine Jay Oliva directed Dark Knight Returns in 2012, and then this in 2013. Like, what a consecutive run there.
Oh, he was on a hot streak for sure.
Yeah,
Because
but
it's two of the most well-regarded DC animated films, I would say.
I'd imagine so. Yeah, I mean, everyone pretty much holds Dark Knight Returns pretty high, and I think for the Justice League stuff, I think this one is definitely up there.
Yeah, but what I do like about that is that whole intro section, I like that it does establish this as a Justice League film.
Hmm.
Because I mean, as focused as Flashpoint is on the Flash and his world and what's going on with him, I mean, if you think about it, this is a very Justice League story because you do get kind of an alternate reality Justice League.
Yes, even in
So
the book too. In the book too, and
yeah, exactly.
but the book doesn't give you the the Justice League proper, like we get in the beginning of this, to show you the alternate versions of, like, to show the Flash working so well with his team, to then show
Mhm.
you the alternate versions of them in the movie. It works really well that way as a film.
I like it. Yeah, I do like it in the film because it shows like you were saying, the Justice League is kind of a well-oiled machine there. So
Hmm.
when everything does go to crap and you have this alternate reality, I think it reinforces how important that cohesive, you know, heroic Justice League is.
Oh, because the first
So,
thing he thinks of when he's in the alternate reality is, I need to find the Justice League.
mhm.
He needs to know, like, who these other heroes are, and the first one he comes across is Batman, which obviously runs the whole story. Um, so yeah, it's a really, this is an example of, like, taking the source material and changing it ever so slightly, but still the same story at heart. Doesn't adds things to add more action, um, but doesn't change core storylines to, for shock value or for just the sake of being different. Like, I mean, the I think I asked you, like, is the Captain Atom thing in a tie-in at all?
I meant to look that up and I completely forgot. I
So it's
don't
definitely not in the
recall
main
that.
story, because
No, it's not.
the final act of the main story, I mean, or the final issue, whatever you want to call it for the book, like, I don't remember anything happening to force Barry to have to make a decision that instant in the book. Like, there's not a huge climax fight. He just, I'm trying to remember. He learns that he can kill. What is it? They learn that they can kill Reverse Flash, kind of the same way in this, but they learn that they can kill him it wouldn't stop him from existing. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've read the book now after seeing the movie. Um, do you remember exactly how that? And I hate to go like be on a tangent here of comparing it to the book, but I think it just I'm using it to try to cement the fact that I think the movie did a really good job of adding certain layers and giving you more action because it's an animated film. You want to have those action beats and have a real, you know, a villain confrontation at the end, and have this crazy thing where all the heroes are doing their own thing. And I don't remember that happening in the book. I think the book ends pretty abruptly.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, Thomas convinces him to run back to not only, you know, it's a mercy for the people in this world that he's created, but also to save the world that, you know, he came from. So there's no like racing against the clock. It's just he's gotta get back, you know, and correct all these mistakes. So it isn't really a race against time. And there's even that section which is not in the movie where he actually sees his mom briefly
Mhm.
before he gets. But do you remember that?
I do. He actually says like "I'm sorry, mom" in the book.
Yeah, he has a conversation with her. And in the movie, to my recollection, unless I'm just completely missing something, I don't think that happened.
You're talking at the end or in the?
At the end, as he's racing back through time.
I don't remember because now I'm going to get them confused with one another. Because I
Exactly.
also doesn't he learn that it's the Reverse Flash much earlier in the book?
Say that one more time.
I feel like he learns that Reverse Flash is the reason this is happening earlier in the book.
I believe so, but I don't recall. I like you. It's I mean I actually read Flashpoint recently,
So
but you
did I,
know,
but I'm still having trouble determining which one was which in my head.
yeah. But either way, in the movie, yeah, that I do remember that he talks to his mother. He kind of has a pit stop on his way
Mhm.
back to his reality in the book and talks to his mom, and that doesn't happen in the movie. In the movie, he is in this race against time to stop the Captain Atom
You're
explosion,
right. Yes,
basically.
I want to say in the book his mom says something like he says like I'm sorry I can't save you, and she's like it's okay because how many lives will you be saving by letting me die or something like that. Like it was a very nice conversation between the two of them in the book, and I'm surprised
Hmm.
that they didn't leave that emotional beat in this. Because I think it would have been nice. But you know, you can only do so many things exactly like the book. They probably wanted to do a little something different and just do their own thing, which is fine. Again, I have no real complaints about the movie. I think the movie does a great job.
Yeah. And do you remember? I'm trying to. Do you remember what the rating is on this one? Is it PG-13?
So I wanted to talk
Pretty.
about that. I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay,
This
go
is
for it.
PG-13. And this movie has always been the example for me of there is no reason you ever need to make one of these R. If this
No, because it
movie,
pushes the boundaries.
holy crap, does it? And I mean, I'm watching, I'm like replaying it now. I was scanning through it and stuff. Like, you see Cyborg's heart beating as he's about to die. Um, Arms are getting chopped off. There is blood everywhere in this thing. I mean, Reverse Flash's death is a hole in his head. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they pushed that PG-13 so far in this that I really question, like, did the MPA like fall asleep while they were rating this, and that's why we now get R-rated ones because DC is like, oh well, this got a PG-13, so therefore this will get a PG-13, or is it like I don't know, I can't figure it out because this one's brutal. Like, I
Well,
mean, you see Mara's head hanging, like,
yeah, when Thomas Wayne shoots Reverse Flash at the end, you can see the brains
oh
inside his
yeah.
head.
I mean,
So
Wonder
it's
Woman chops off Mara's head and then holds it out, and like it's right in front of the camera. Like, so they're not. If this was live action, there is no doubt it would be R. But the fact that this got to be that's why part of me wonders like do we unfairly judge the rating because of this one where I do feel like maybe the MPA let a few things slide on this one. Um it's weird
well, for
because
this,
I
I feel like even some of the newer films, it's the language that gets the newer ones, the R
yeah, which
rating.
is yeah, like do you think this one violence wise is worse than Long Halloween? Because I don't.
No, I think they're on par with each other.
Yeah, but like
Um,
what? The Long Halloween got the R rating for the one F bomb in part two. Like that's just so stupid. Like why bother?
yeah, I agree. The difference there, the MPAA giving this a PG-13 and Long Halloween Part 2 an R makes no sense to me. But it is what it is.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think I'm trying to think now of like some of the biggest differences between the two, between the book and the film. But I think the driving point is, you know, Flash has made this mistake of going back and trying to fix things in the past, and has made a horrible new reality. What's interesting to me, and I never thought about it when reading the book, but I thought about it this time watching the movie, is they make it very clear that this is not like an Elseworlds. This is not another dimension or
exactly.
another. This is, this is not Earth 276 or whatever. This is Barry's Earth. I mean, this is the
Yes.
primary DC universe, and what he's done has altered, the reality of his universe.
Yeah,
So,
they're not doing the Marvel method where when you alter time, you're creating alternate timelines. No, time is different than the multiverse. They are saying if you go back in time, it has a ripple effect on your timeline, your current Earth, everything. Like it's you are messing with time, and it what is it? Like he says, like it even affected things that happened prior to him saving his mother, which I thought was fascinating. I don't remember if that's explained in the book or not, but I love that little addition to this because Barry's like, no, how could me saving my mom um affect things that happened prior to that? And Reverse Flash is like, oh, when you mess with time, it has a ripple effect forward and backward. And I thought that was really cool.
which makes sense actually, because you're messing with time as a whole,
Yeah,
not
which
just
almost like if
what.
you it's funny because I was actually going to say like to me it doesn't make any sense, but it does make sense because like nothing with time travel makes sense. So if you say it and you believe it, like who cares? And you
Mhm.
stick to it. Like I get it. Like like you just said, you're messing with time as a whole. It's fracturing that whole essence of time travel and
But
I
it
love that like fake science fiction reality of it, and I just think that's so cool to give you something with such conviction that you're like, okay, like I'll go with that, I'll buy that.
well, what I like about it the most is that it makes the stakes feel more real.
Hmm.
Because if it's an alternate Earth, sure, you would love for these people to be saved, but at the end of the day, as long as it's not your Earth, what does it matter? But it completely is, because even even if he accomplishes his goal and saves, his reality, he's ending this reality that he's now in and
Hmm.
all the lives that are in it. So
Yes.
that's a hell of a conundrum, because you're basically killing this entire reality to make yours, viable. Which of course this reality sucks, and nobody in it wanted it to continue, but still I think that's some pretty big stakes.
Well, that was an ethical conversation that he had with, or a moral conversation he has with Thomas, where he's like, "You didn't tell Cyborg why we're doing this," and
Mhm.
Thomas basically like he doesn't need to know, and Barry's like, "I think he has a right to know. Like we're doing this to end this world." Like, but it just becomes like a known thing that like everyone understands this world is beyond saving at this point. The only way to save this world is to destroy it and bring back the old world. And I think from a logical DC comic standpoint, it was their way to reconfigure the current status of Earth One or whatever you want to call it, because it doesn't change everything back completely, which is genius. Like it's a smart way to have this crazy event to just slightly alter the status quo of your Earth, to have a slight reboot or like they had the whole they basically just changed like a couple things here and there and made that whole 5 year thing, which ended up being kind of BS because it was impossible to keep with that 5 year thing. But it was a smart way to kind of do a soft reboot. And
Mhm.
you can't do that if you're making it a multiverse. Like it doesn't work that way. Like so, I think it's smart to say no. The new status quo going forward is this now Earth, and we can kind of say like, oh well, that was all because of Flashpoint. This changed a little bit. This changed a little bit. Like I think it was done really well. And at the time, was that the plan for this to kick off the animated universe? Because I don't think it was, but we've kind of just headcanoned it that way.
Well, I think I think with anything in these animated films, if it does well, you may, continue to use it. If it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
it is what it is. I
Okay.
think the success of this movie, because it was well regarded, it led to them kind of piggybacking off of it, and because the events of this are actually brought up a few more times in like when they reboot, when they went into the quote unquote new 52 films, because Justice League War, this movie sets up Justice League War.
Totally forgot about the
Um,
post credit scene. You're right. Yes, it does.
yeah, and then there's a plot point in it that is revisited in Suicide Squad: Hell to Pay.
Yes, which was such a cool reveal in that film. If you haven't seen that film, it is kind of a pseudo sequel to this, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then of course, it loosely, but Constantine kind of looks into Barry's mind in Apocalypse War, and
And that's
he
how they
knows about
determine.
this.
Yes, that's right, because that's how they tie it in, and that's how they determine how to save the world in that case.
Yeah, so that's one really cool thing is this led into an entire DC animated universe.
Hmm.
And if you want to watch an entire, story from beginning to end, you can watch this all the way through Apocalypse War and get like a full DC continuity, which I think
Hmm.
is pretty cool.
It is, and it's a
Um,
lot of films. It's a lot of homework. It's a lot of stuff to get through, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Like there's just a lot to it. It's a lot of fun.
mhm.
Almost like and I don't want to compare it to that, but this is kind of like the DC version of the MCU. Like this is the closest way of doing that, where it's almost like the episodic storytelling.
Yeah, and that's I have, and I don't want to turn this into the Flash episode, but this has worked for kicking off the new 52. It has worked very well for kicking off a DC animated universe. I have high hopes that this is going to work well to kick off the DCU on film. Because all indications are pointing towards it is going to be a very good beginning. So I don't
Mhm.
know, kind of trying to check my excitement, but I can't pretend, especially after watching this again and kind of looking through my Flashpoint book and all that. I'm so excited.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think I'm excited too because like, yes, it is an event. Yes, it is to kick off the new DCU. But this is such an emotional story for Barry. Everyone wants to say like, "Oh, there's too many Batman in the." And I know we're getting on a tangent again, but we are on the road to Flash here, so I think it's relevant. Everyone's like, "Oh, there's Batman in it. There's Supergirl in it. Like, is this even a Flash movie?" Well, to me, that's like saying, "Is Flashpoint a Flash movie?" Because it is. Like, just because these other characters are there, like, I wouldn't consider this a Batman movie because Thomas Wayne is there. Like they're just they're fueling Flash's story. And my favorite part of Flashpoint is the emotional aspect of Barry saving his mom and having to deal with the fact that
mhm.
him saving his mom ruined the world because he messed with time. And I love the part where Eobor basically says like, "Oh, you're so noble. You went back and saved your mom. You didn't go back and stop the JFK assassination or stop Hitler from slaughtering a bunch of starting the World War II or whatever." But like, you saved your mom. Good job. And you ruined the world by saving your mom. That's what was worth it to you. Like I think that's but who can blame someone for wanting to go back in time and save their mom? Like it's an emotional
Exactly.
story, and that's what I think I love. That yeah, despite all of the other great stuff that we got in this, and we might get in the Flash film, it's still at its core a Flash movie.
Well, and that is a really good point about what Reverse Flash says in that moment, because as much as you hate to give credit to the villain and admit that he's right, I mean, technically, the Flash is the villain of this story.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
he's the well. He's the
Yeah,
catalyst
yeah,
for all of
Eobard's
this.
just there to taunt him.
Mhm.
Like, that's
Yeah,
really all he's
exactly.
there for. And the fact that he says something like, "You now can't even erase me. Like, I'm just a" he's the paradox, right? Isn't that the case where Eobard's technically the paradox now, where he can't be erased, but then Batman just shoots him and he's like, "Well, I can still kill you."
Yeah.
But that's what's so great about this is you assume that Eobard has created this world, and then when you find out, no, it's Barry, he doesn't even remember doing it, which I think that will be a difference in the Flash movie, is we know that Barry did it in the Flash movie. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I love the whole relationship between him and Thawne in this, because Thawne is such a crazy, creepy villain. To see him throwing it in Barry's face that, no, Barry, that's the best part about this. I didn't do this, you did.
Mhm. Yeah. I agree. It gives you kind of a icky feeling when he's laying all that out, because as much as you love Flash, you can't help but you have to agree with Reverse Flash, which is it's a sucky situation.
Mhm.
Um, but I did want to ask you, because there are so many different variations of characters that we love in this world. Did you have a favorite, like, alternate version of a DC character in this?
Hmm. That's tough because they're like, do you go with the one that's so drastically different, like Thomas Wayne, because I think he's so compelling, or someone like Cyborg? Cyborg is still Cyborg, and I think that's so cool.
Mhm.
Like, Cyborg is still Cyborg in this film, no matter what world he's in, he's still the same.
Mhm.
I think Lois Lane gets a lot of good moments in this. Steve Trevor gets a good moment in this.
Even though
Excuse
he's
me.
quickly dispatched.
Exactly, but you still see him being a hero.
Mhm.
Um,
By the
I
way, I
think
love the moment when he says, as he's standing in front of all these Amazons with the lasso around him, he says that Lois Lane is the most beautiful woman he's ever seen
that's one of my favorite
in
parts of the
front of
movie. Yes.
Diana. Yeah.
Yep. One of my favorite parts of the movie, because it's, obviously it's honest, and you don't really hear Steve Trevor talk about Lois Lane too much. So it's a weird crossover there with the two of them. But of course, like, I love
Mhm.
that he has to say that, and in front of all these beautiful Amazons that are like, who the heck is Lois Lane? Um, but
Yeah.
I I mean, I would have to say Thomas Wayne. It's a boring answer, but I think that is my answer.
Mhm.
Um, but I think, to go the complete opposite route, I love that Cyborg is still Cyborg.
Yeah, I think as much as I love Batman, and this is unfair to this movie, it's unfair to the Flashpoint book. Um, and I know I might catch some flack for this. The Tom King run on Batman kind of tarnished Thomas Wayne Batman for me just a little bit.
Yeah, because he made him a villain, and I feel like he didn't get who Thomas Wayne was in this story. But yeah, I don't want to go down that road.
No, and I can't help but think about
Yeah,
that when I see him now.
I don't.
So
I ignore it. I'll be honest with you. I didn't even. To me, they're two different characters. Like, that's
yeah,
almost like an Elseworlds version of this version. Like,
hmm
they don't even
yeah,
seem like the same character at all.
yeah, and you know the new Flashpoint Beyond, it kind of walks that back a little bit.
Man, I
So
can't
it's
even
like,
remember what the hell happened in that book. That book, I still, I would have to read that book a few times to understand that book. I don't know if I'm just an idiot, but that book confused the hell out of me.
but either way, so as much as I'd love to say it's Thomas Wayne Batman, I just can't. Um, for me, it's kind of a tie between this world's Shazam, which is Captain Thunder,
Mhm,
and this world's Superman,
mhm.
because they're just so different, but still, you know, there's so many aspects that you see. Like, I love the idea with Captain Thunder in this, is that the kids all turn into one being.
Mhm.
Like, it's kind of a shared consciousness,
Yes.
and
Definitely
I
a
like
cool
that.
take on that. Yeah, definitely a cool take on that.
Yeah, and even Tawny Tiger, or Talkie Tawny, excuse me.
Yeah.
Even he is part of the collective, right? Doesn't he turn into part of Shazam?
Oh, I don't even remember that. You might be right though. But and talking about the PG-13 rating, I mean, Billy gets like slaughtered. Like, what the
Yes.
hell? That's from the book. That's straight from the book. But man, like killing children in this too, like crazy.
Exactly. But I mean, I applaud that they, they had the, the fortitude to go there.
Yeah, I mean theoretically everyone in this movie dies,
Yeah,
so he was gonna
true.
die anyway.
And then the Superman, it's just so interesting to me because he is he is the Superman that we by the end, he's kind of the Superman we know. Even though he's like this emaciated, skinny Superman because he's been trapped under, he's been trapped underground for all these years.
Hmm.
He's never had exposure to the sunlight, so he didn't become, the Superman that we know. Um, but it terrifies him when he is, when he initially escapes with Batman and the Flash and Cyborg. It terrifies him that he's killed these people. But at the end of the movie, like you see that this is a Superman that did not have the raising and the morals of Jonathan and Martha Kent. Because at the end of the movie, he is just mowing people down.
Oh yeah, and I applaud it. To be honest with you, like
Yeah,
it's always easier to do that kind of stuff in an Elseworlds type of story, or an
it
alternate reality
is.
type of thing. But it makes sense. Like why? Like they're at war in this movie. Like I'm sorry, the killing rule does not count in something like this, as drastic as this. But yeah, like he's still the same person at heart, but ignorance not the right word. He's just so innocent because he's like a child still. He's had no upbringing whatsoever. He's just been locked away, and he's he's like a caged animal that still luckily has that heart to him.
Mhm.
um but yeah, I agree. I like the interpretation of Superman, and that's one of the side stories that I would like to read eventually, because I am not familiar with what they did with that story at all, in the books, as far as what was fleshed out with it and this whole Project Superman thing. But I do like what they gave us in this, because he becomes a really big part at the end of this, which Superman should be the big savior at the end to help them out. But
Yeah, and that's the part I like is that, as much as these characters are different, there's those core elements, because of course, like you just said, Superman is going to be the savior at the end, and he very much is, even though this is a radically different Superman. That that piece is still there. Kind of like you said with Cyborg, he's still Cyborg, you know.
well,
Um
and even Batman, that's why, like what you said about the Tom King run, like is so bothersome, is because this Batman, he's still Batman at its core. It's just the next level of extreme, because you're now changing the dynamic of, okay, what would happen to a child that lost their parent? What road would they go down? No, flip that. What would happen to a parent that lost their child and their wife because of this because of what happened? That's We're
mhm,
getting just that little bit darker of a Batman. He's still trying to, I mean, he's not really trying to be a hero, but he's trying to rid the world of evil, but he's just doing it in a much more drastic way, because he dealt with a more drastic situation than Bruce did.
mhm, absolutely. And then speaking of Batman and Bruce, um my favorite part of the book, and of course, because I'm a Batman sucker,
It's probably
and
everyone's
my
favorite, because we all know what you're going to right now, and I think it's
yeah,
pretty much everyone's favorite part of the book.
and my favorite part of the movie
Hmm.
is, the letter that Thomas gives Barry to take
Hmm.
back to Bruce. And I don't know, just, and not to bring the room down, but knowing, that we don't have Kevin Conroy anymore, I don't know, it just made me grin hearing Conroy say, "You're a hell of a messenger."
Hmm.
Because that's just become a line that everybody loves from this movie.
Hmm.
And hearing Conroy say it again, just I don't know, it made me smile. I love the moment. You don't get to see what the letter says in the movie, correct?
You only see a couple words. I don't even think you see the whole letter in the book. It's cut off, isn't it? Even in the book, you
Um,
don't see the whole thing.
I don't think you see the whole thing, but I do think you see more
You
of
see
it
more of
than
it. You
you.
definitely see more of it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you see kind of like portions of it, and I think it's expanded on in some other work. um, related to Flashpoint. I can't
Hmm.
remember 100%. But anyway, yeah, the point is you don't need to know what it says.
Oh no.
You just need to know that it's a letter. As soon as Batman recognizes Thomas's handwriting,
Hmm.
and then you hear the "you're a hell of a messenger" and you know Batman's choked up, man, that gets me. I love it.
And I can sympathize with that because like I would recognize my father's handwriting instantly.
Mhm.
Like it's something that you just, and I don't know. My father has very distinct handwriting. I don't know if that's just because of that, but I do like I would recognize my dad's handwriting always. So like it's cool that like they decided to go that route for whatever reason, and yeah, like that's when the emotion starts kicking in right away. When like the minute he sees that this is clearly from his father, like how do you comprehend something like that?
Yeah. Yep, I completely agree. It's tough, and you've got to think that Bruce has spent years like reading his dad's notes and stuff like that. You know,
Hmm.
medical notes that he's
Yeah,
made.
that's a good point too. Yeah, his diary or whatever. Like if you want to go there,
Yeah,
yeah.
you've got to think that's a thing. So instantly recognizing that's really cool, and I love that whole conversation about how like Barry remembers, even though his mom is gone. You know, the world has returned to normal where his mom did die. But he has these memories from this alternate, timeline where he remembers birthdays spent with her and just
Hmm.
these holidays and occasions and just all these memories. And he's questioning it, and Bruce tells him maybe it's a gift.
Yeah.
You know, I love that too because you have these two characters that we love. You have the Flash and Batman, and they both have these gifts from their parents at the end of the film,
Hmm.
which I think is a great capper for this movie.
Oh yeah, and not to get too overly sappy or sentimental here, but like as we're getting older and with our families and stuff, and you look back at your time in this world, and like all you have is your memories. So whether it's from an alternate reality or not, like that memory is just as vivid probably to Flash as a memory that like you and I have, like in trying to like put it into like realistic terms, which is hard to do. But like a memory is all you have. So like people always say like our memories are mostly false, but because we remember them the way they are, who's to say it's not real or not? Because that's all you have. And it's such a cool way to kind of um uh to get you to relate to these characters because everyone has those memories, and you can relate to having a memory and making that your reality. So I think that's a really smart way to do it, and that's the stuff that I really love about these films, and that make you go a little deeper. It's not just the popcorn fun or the crazy animation and the fights and all that. There's a lot of emotion in these stories. I give DC a lot of credit, and credit to Jay Oliva for bringing that out of the actors and the performances and stuff. But yeah, I love that stuff.
Mhm. Yep, completely agree. But I do think with that emotional ending, and gosh, it looks like that's going to happen, and it looks like we're going to get some emotion in the Flash film itself as
Hmm.
well. But I think that's a good place to tie it off for this look back at 10 years of Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox. Again, not without its nitpicks, but I think well worth anyone's time, and one that I never mind revisiting, and I can't believe it's 10 years old. But Joe, that we're not quite finished yet. Oh, real quick, did you have anything else for Flashpoint Paradox, or you good to
Nope,
go?
nope. That's a good place to wrap that
Okay.
up. I think we covered pretty much everything.
Awesome. Well, we're not going to leave you guys yet, though, because we do have some emails from listeners and we want to make sure we get to those. So, without further ado, our first email is from Lee Ankrit. Hello, Lee. Good to hear from you again. And he says, "Hello, gents. Hope you're both doing well. I've just finished listening to your Bane episode. Great listen as always. And I had some thoughts. Full disclosure, I'm listening on a beach in Greece and have already had many beers, so apologize if I actually start repeating your own comments. Firstly, Batman and Robin was also my first introduction to the character back in 97, but I have to admit it was the absolute perfect character design to get a 7-year-old boy excited. You already touched on his design visual aesthetic, but let's be honest. Having him as a master tactician absolutely would not have worked in the tone of that film. I still like him as is in the particular film. I actually didn't read Nightfall until about 5 years ago, and definitely agree it loses some spark once Asbats takes the lead. I haven't read the Tom King run, and although you painted a good picture for Bane, your Batman comments hardly sold it to me, so that one is still low down on my to do list. Comics wise, then, do you think it is possible to give Bane his full credit in a short story setup? Can you really get a feel for his intelligence and tactical skill if it is not spread over a long arc? Is this why he is mostly seen as a merc for hire on much shorter stories so that he can still be included on a regular basis? The merc for hire approach also has its problems, though, as they need to make sure he is not just a Deathstroke Deadshot clone story wise. It seems a difficult task to write for an iconic Batman villain, in my opinion. Finally, I have another thought for a future episode. As you are both such well read Batman comic fans, would you perhaps consider an episode listing either your top 5 favorite Batman comics stories, or perhaps your top 5 comic recommendations that casual readers are perhaps not aware of? I know Lost episodes aren't the most original, but I definitely appreciate them, especially if they give me suggestions of what to read, view in the future. I think he meant comics episodes.
I think he meant
Um,
list. That might have been what he
maybe,
was saying.
maybe
Yeah.
list, maybe.
Yeah.
As always, thank you for all the hard work you put into the podcast. I always look forward to the next episode. All the best, Lee. Well, Lee, that was a doozy. But thank you so much. Those are some awesome thoughts there. And I do want to get into those. I will let you know, Joe, we're going to hold off on the last question he asked there about the future episode until we read the next email. But to just dive into this one, firstly, Lee, I hope you had a great time in Greece. Hope you had a great vacation. So far as Batman and Robin, completely get it. With the age range you were there, Bane he looked really cool in Batman and Robin. So at that age, completely get it. And no, I don't think the tactician Bane would have worked in that particular version of Batman. And then, so far as the arc for Bane, it's a great question, and I do think you've got a point there about why you see Bane used so often as just like a mercenary. Because you do, for a proper Bane story, I do think you need a lot of setup, which is why we don't see it a lot. But again, as I said on the last episode, I think it's why it's so effective when you do, because Bane, when you give him the proper setup, he's a terrifying villain for Batman. So yeah, I'm with you there. I do think you're on track. But Joe, so far as what Lee mentioned here with Batman and Robin, and then for Bane's arc, what do you think?
So I agree with him with Batman and Robin. I don't think the tactician angle would have worked. I think it is with the tone of that movie, it's hard to do anything but what they did. And you know what? They got the aesthetic other than the whole green hulking thing, whatever. The aesthetic is there. It's appealing for the younger audience, which is what they wanted. Again, that movie was what it was. They introduced us to the character, and you know what? If you want to take something positive out of that movie, it's hey, this is a new character that you might never heard of. Go look him up now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as far as the arc of Bane, I think we touched on that a little bit in the Bane episode because I think we did agree that like how do you use this brilliant tactician in a short arc, because you can't, if you use it in a 3-issue arc, like how brilliant could he have been if he was defeated so easily? And I think that is a really tough thing with the character. I think it's hard to find a way to use him without making it this big sweeping thing. And I also want to say, like, yeah, we're not huge fans of the Tom King run, but give it a shot because it is polarizing. Some people absolutely love it. And for me personally, I've said this nonstop. I think Tom King's story ideas are brilliant. There's just something
Mm-hmm.
about the way he writes that isn't for me. But I think the stories are great. So like I'm excited about Tom King being involved in the DC movies because I think his story ideas are great. I just want, I hope that the combination of a Tom King story and maybe a director that I love would make for a great movie. So
Mm-hmm.
again, if you're interested in Bane as a character, I think give it a shot. You might like it. Not everyone is going to have the same opinions as me and Eric go, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people love that arc. So give it a shot. Don't take me and Eric's little bit of negative towards it as a reason to not give it a shot.
No, I agree with that because there is a ton of people that do love that run. Um, it, like you said, it's polarizing, and whenever something is polarizing, that means there's a good amount of people that like it.
And it means there's
So
something to it. It's worth having a conversation about. Like, just because we don't like it doesn't mean it's not worth
mhm.
checking out, because yeah, like I give him credit for making something that's polarizing. I mean, listen, we're big Zack Snyder fans. Nobody more polarizing than him. We just happen to be on the good side of that. Where with Tom King, we just aren't quite on the positive for him. And you have different tastes. And I will always give a writer credit for making something that is ambitious, even if it doesn't work for me. And he definitely is ambitious, and he does his thing, and he commits to it. And so please do not dismiss it because we weren't crazy about it. Give it a shot. And I'll be honest with you, the one plus to Tom King, there is not a lot of words. It will take you about an hour to read like 20 issues. Like, you can zip through that whole thing. I'm not even like, it is quick.
Mhm. Yeah, completely agree. And yeah, I echo what you said about Tom King's run. I completely think you should give it a shot, even though it's not completely for us. There's plenty of people that it is for. So
And
absolutely give it a
and
try.
the art is fantastic.
Oh yeah, absolutely agree with that. But so far as your third kind of topic there, Lee, hang tight. We will get to that. But thank you so much for the email. Moving on, our next email here is Stuart from Guernsey, and he says, "Hey guys, it's Stuart. I have a show recommendation for you. Would you both be interested in ranking your top 5 Batman comics? I think I could guess 2 of yours, but I would be interested to know the rest and also the listeners' lists. Anyway, hope you guys are doing well. Keep up the good work on the show, Stuart." So, I guess my first question for you, Stuart, is were you on the beach in Greece with Lee? Because you guys are kind of simpatico there. But Joe, we have 2 back-to-back emails with listeners asking us to do a top 5 Batman comic ranking episode, or our personal rankings. So, I don't know. What do you think? It sounds like something we may have to do in the future.
I think it would be really fun. And I like Lee's idea where recommend things that maybe wouldn't be the obvious choice, because I think our top would be almost like too obvious. But maybe we could do something kind of like what we did with the Conroy the Batman voice actors, where it's like, let's zip through the obvious ones and really talk about some that aren't as obvious or aren't as recognizable. Maybe find a happy medium there somehow, and discuss a bunch of comics. I'm kind of surprised we haven't done that yet, now that I'm thinking about it. But that would be a lot
You,
of fun.
you know what's funny is we're getting to that point, and yeah, it's not like we have hundreds of episodes in the can or anything like that, but we're getting to that point where we have enough episodes now that when I was reading both of these emails, I was like, have we not done this?
I think
Because
it's yeah, like, also because we're really we've done a lot of like shorter anniversaries, or anniversaries that like other shows have covered, but because we're a newer show, we're like finding ways to talk about like the big ones. And we have a couple big ones coming up this year that other shows have all talked about that we haven't gotten a chance to. um I actually suggested to you a specific comic that I want to cover in the next couple months, hopefully. And so we're talking about doing that. And I think it's because we don't cover the news that we cover a lot of like specific topics that we've gotten to cover a lot of fun stuff. So yeah, I'm surprised. I guess we haven't done a lot of specific lists like that for comics. We've done characters, but we've never done
mm,
comics. I think that would be a really fun idea.
I had to go back and look through the episode list. And I was just searching and searching. And I was like, nope, I guess we have it. But I was
Mhm.
shocked because it sounds
Yeah.
like something you and I would do. But an answer to that question for Stuart and for you, Lee, yes, I think that is an episode we're going to have to do. I will let you know it may be a little while. We do have some things on the docket that we have coming. We definitely have, our next episode, which is, I'll just go ahead and say it. Our next episode is going to be 10 years of Man of Steel, which I am so excited about. And that is our next stop on the road to the Flash for obvious reasons.
It's one of the few non-Batman episodes. We haven't done an anniversary that's not Batman related. That's
true.
Probably the first one. And I remember asking you, like, listen, are we covering that? Is that okay? And you're like, oh, we're covering that one. Because I know that's your favorite DCU movie. So I was like, we're covering that, right? And it's too relevant to the Flash. I think it worked out too perfectly.
Yep, absolutely. So that will be our next one. And then we do have, of course, The Flash after that. That's coming. And then we have the next episode after that already lined up. And Joe just kind of mentioned it's going to be a comic. So we are getting back into comics soon. But I'm going to keep this idea on the docket, and you guys are going to hear this soon because this is actually an idea that I'm excited about. And I love that you guys are sending in ideas for episodes of the show. That's what we wanted. We wanted this engagement with the audience. So thank you, Lee. Thank you, Stuart, for your emails and your suggestions there. But Joe, I think this is where we're gonna sign off for the night or for the day whenever you're listening to this. Man, next time I talk to you, you will have seen The Flash, and I'm very, very jealous of that. I just want to say that again. But thank you so much for joining me again and being an awesome co-host, and gloat a little bit about going to see The Flash tomorrow, and then let everybody know where they can find you on social media.
Well, like I was telling you before, I still get nervous when I'm going to see these pre-events, the pre-screening events, because they overbook these things, and I'm always worried something's going to happen where I'm not going to make the cut or I'm going to be late. So I'm still excited. I can't wait. I can't believe I'm going to get to see it. Please, if anyone's listening that does get to see it tomorrow, and I confirm that I did see it, and you guys want to talk about it, private message me, please. I don't want to obviously be talking about this freely on social media to ruin it for everybody else. And I won't be able to talk to Eric for the next month about anything because what else am I going to talk to him about? Obviously, if I've seen The Flash, I only want to talk about The Flash. So
we're going to talk about Man of Steel, Joe. That's what we're going to talk about.
And how it compares to The Flash. No,
we're not.
so yeah, I'm so excited for that. So yeah, please, anyone who does see it tomorrow, enjoy it. And I'm actually right now, as we sign off, I'm going to go finish my my rewatch of Zack Snyder's Justice League. I got disc 2, because Eric, you know me, I can't finish these damn movies all in one sitting anymore. So I finished disc 1 earlier, and I'm going to pop in disc 2 tonight to finish that up and wrap up my rewatch. And I can't believe I'm actually getting to see this tomorrow. So everybody enjoy the ride. If you don't get to see it, enjoy the next 2-3 weeks, because that is fun. The ride is part of the fun. This kind of cut my ride short. I'm not complaining, but man, I can't believe it's finally here. So I'm still looking forward to covering Man of Steel though, for the next episode, and enjoying the ride with you guys, whether I see it or not. So thank you again for having me for this episode, Eric. And I just can't believe we're here already. But if you guys want to, I don't even remember now because I've rambled so much. Did you tell me to plug everything?
Yeah. Let everybody know where they can find you.
I'm still a little giddy about seeing The Flash tomorrow. I apologize. But yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as jforn11, and you can find me on Facebook as Joe Fornarato, FORNAROTTO.
Thank you so much. And yeah, if you guys hear another voice on the other side of the podcast on the Man of Steel episode, you'll know that Joe spoiled something and he's permanently banished. No. But so far as myself, if you'd like to find me on social media, my personal accounts can be found on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd. That's mecarter89, mecarter89. And the show can once again be found at TFR Batpod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you have any thoughts, opinions, suggestions like Lee and Stuart did today, you can reach us by email at tfrbatpod@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, the easiest and best way that you can do that is to leave us a rating and review anywhere you listen to this podcast. If you do leave a written review on Apple Podcasts, we will read them on the show. If you're looking for another way to support the show, we don't ask that you spend anything on us, but if you'd like to, we greatly appreciate it. You can go to redbubble.com and search Shop TFR. That's all one word. You can find our logos on all kinds of things there. Our wonderful theme music was created by the very talented Gaurav Venkateswar, and you can find his work on gvtunes.net. But thank you guys so much for joining us on this road to the Flash. We can't wait to talk more about it soon. But until then, make sure you keep that bat signal lit and pointed skyward. Batman was created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane and is the sole property of Warner Brothers Discovery. The Fire Rises, a Batman podcast, is in no way associated with Warner Brothers Discovery, DC Comics, or DC Studios. The thoughts and opinions of the participants of this show are their own and do not represent the companies that they work for. Thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.
Just to review, you broke the chronal barrier, went back in time, prevented your mother's murder, and completely changed the time stream.
Nearly destroying the entire world along the way, yes. There's still something I don't understand. I remember all of it. Not just what happened after I woke up there, but my whole other life. I remember every birthday cake my mother ever baked me. My room. Everything. Perhaps some kind of temporal after effect?
Or perhaps it was a gift.
Yes, a gift.
This is my father's handwriting. You're one hell of a messenger. Thank you.